One of the most destructive anti-concepts in the history of moral philosophy is the term duty. An anti-concept is an artificial, unnecessary, and rationally unusable term designed to replace and obliterate some legitimate concept. The term duty obliterates more than single concepts. It is a metaphysical and psychological killer. It negates all the essentials of a rational view of life and makes them inapplicable to man's actions. The legitimate concept nearest in meaning to the word duty is obligation. The two are often used interchangeably, but there is a profound difference between them which people sense, yet seldom identify. The Random House Dictionary of the English Language, unabridged edition, 1966, describes the difference as follows. Duty, obligation, refer to what one feels bound to do. Duty is what one performs, or avoids doing, in fulfillment of the permanent dictates of conscience, piety, right, or law. Duty to one's country, one's duty to tell the truth, to raise children properly. An obligation is what one is bound to do to fulfill the dictates of usage, custom, or propriety, and to carry out a particular, specific, and often personal promise or agreement, financial or social obligations. From the same dictionary, dutiful, synonym, 1. Respectful, docile, submissive. An older dictionary is somewhat more open about it. Duty, 1. Conduct due to parents and superiors as shown in obedience or submission. Dutiful, 1. Performing or ready to perform the duties required by one who has the right to claim submission, obedience, or deference. Webster's International Dictionary, 2nd edition, 1944. The meaning of the term duty is the moral necessity to perform certain actions for no reason other than obedience to some higher authority, without regard to any personal goal, motive, desire, or interest. It is obvious that that anti-concept is a product of mysticism, not an abstraction derived from reality. In a mystic ethics, duty stands for the notion that man must obey the dictates of a supernatural authority. Even though the anti-concept has been secularized, and the authority of God's will has been ascribed to earthly entities, such as parents, country, state, mankind, etc., their alleged supremacy still rests on nothing but a mystic edict. Who in hell can have the right to claim that sort of submission or obedience? This is the only proper form and locality for the question, because nothing and no one can have such a right or claim here on earth. The arch-advocate of duty is Immanuel Kant. He went so much farther than other theorists that they seem innocently benevolent by comparison. Duty, he holds, is the only standard of virtue, but virtue is not its own reward. If a reward is involved, it is no longer virtue. The only moral motivation, he holds, is devotion to duty for duty's sake. Only an action motivated exclusively by such devotion is a moral action, i.e., an action performed without any concern for inclination, desire, or self-interest. It is a duty to preserve one's life, and moreover, everyone has a direct inclination to do so. But for that reason, the often anxious care which most men take of it has no intrinsic worth, and the maxim of doing so has no moral import. They preserve their lives according to duty, but not from duty. But if adversities and hopeless sorrow completely take away the relish for life, if an unfortunate man, strong in soul, is indignant rather than despondent or dejected over his fate and wishes for death, and yet preserves his life without loving it, and from neither inclination nor fear, but from duty, then his maxim has a moral import. Immanuel Kant, Foundations of the Metaphysics of Morals. And it is in this way, undoubtedly, that we should understand those passages of Scripture which command us to love our neighbor and even our enemy. For love as an inclination cannot be commanded. But beneficence from duty, when no inclination impels it, and when it is opposed by a natural and unconquerable aversion, is practical love, not pathological love. It resides in the will, and not in the propensities of feeling, in principles of action, and not in tender sympathy, and it alone can be commanded. Thus, the first proposition of morality is that to have moral worth, an action must be done from duty. If one were to accept it, the anti-concept duty destroys the concept of reality. An unaccountable, supernatural power takes precedence over facts and dictates one's actions regardless of context or consequences. Duty destroys reason. It supersedes one's knowledge and judgment, making the process of thinking and judgment irrelevant to one's actions. Duty destroys values. It demands that one betray or sacrifice one's highest values for the sake of an inexplicable command, and it transforms values into a threat to one's moral worth, since the experience of pleasure or desire casts doubt on the moral purity of one's motives. Duty destroys love. Who could want to be loved not from inclination but from duty? Duty destroys self-esteem. It leaves no self to be esteemed. If one accepts that nightmare in the name of morality, the infernal irony is that duty destroys morality. A deontological, duty-centered theory of ethics confines moral principles to a list of prescribed duties and leaves the rest of man's life without any moral guidance, cutting morality off from any application to the actual problems and concerns of man's existence. Such matters as work, career, ambition, love, friendship, pleasure, happiness, values, insofar as they are not pursued as duties, are regarded by these theories as amoral, i.e., outside the province of morality. If so, then by what standard is a man to make his daily choices, or direct the course of his life? In a deontological theory, all personal desires are banished from the realm of morality. A personal desire has no moral significance, be it a desire to create or a desire to kill. For example, if a man is not supporting his life from duty, such a morality makes no distinction between supporting it by honest labor or by robbery. If a man wants to be honest, he deserves no moral credit. As Kant would put it, such honesty is praiseworthy, but without moral import. Only a vicious repressor who feels a profound desire to lie, cheat, and steal, but forces himself to act honestly for the sake of duty, would receive a recognition of moral worth from Kant and his ilk. This is the sort of theory that gives morality a bad name. A widespread fear and or resentment of morality, the feeling that morality is an enemy, a musty realm of suffering and senseless boredom, is not the product of mystic, ascetic, or Christian codes as such, but a monument to the ugliest repository of hatred for life, man and reason, the soul of Immanuel Kant. Kant's theories are, of course, mysticism of the lowest order, of the noumenal order, but he offered them in the name of reason. The primitive level of man's intellectual development is best demonstrated by the fact that he got away with it. If genius denotes extraordinary ability, then Kant may be called a genius in his capacity to sense, play on, and perpetuate human fears, irrationalities, and above all, ignorance. His influence rests not on philosophical but on psychological factors. His view of morality is propagated by men who have never heard of him. He merely gave them a formal academic status. A Kantian sense of duty is